Election 2008, Norm Coleman declared victory.
Victory that the voters gave us last night.
Then he watched his Senate seat slip away. Al Franken won by just 312 votes.
A three-judge panel today said that I was winner of this election.
Franken won after an 8-month court fight that ultimately came down to how many absentee ballots would be counted.
A 5 Eyewitness News investigation found that mistakes made with absentee ballots are now leading to changes in the way many votes will be counted if you go to the polls here in Minnesota next week. Our Mark Albert has worked on this story for months, and he's here now with the exclusive. Mark?
We contacted dozens of cities and counties asking to examine the absentee ballot envelopes from 2008 that were accepted and rejected. It was not easy. Not only did many cities throw up legal roadblocks, one city, Bloomington, even suggested that felony charges could be pursued against us if we reported what we found.
Being an election judge is often an exhausting task. We met 3 of them, paid volunteers who work a 16-hour shift every election in Minneapolis. At the end of a long day, election judges statewide are asked to deal with a flood of absentee ballots, nearly 300,000 last year. Out of the dozens of absentee ballots in Margaret Dolan's South Minneapolis precinct,
we didn't reject any absentee ballots this last time.
Despite their extensive training, these 3 veteran election judges told us they only checked if a voter was registered in that precinct and whether they had already voted. No one told them, they say, to make sure the absentee ballot had all the legal requirements, including a voter's signature, address, and witness. They trusted that election officials at City Hall were making the correct call.
We aren't really deeply trained in that, I suppose.
You're not deeply trained in how to deal with absentee ballots.
Right.
Did they tell you to look for a voter's signature on the absentee ballot?
No.
Did they tell you to look for the witness, address, and name?
No. We want to go with the intent of the voter. We want to give the voter every break.
Or, in the words of this election expert,
Minnesota's taken a little bit too far.
Edward Foley is a nationally known election law scholar at Ohio State University. He's written extensively about elections, including those in Minnesota, which he praises as the gold standard. Foley found the biggest mistake in 2008 was that some cities strictly followed the law and others apparently did not.
In Minnesota, flaws were exposed, mistakes were made. You can't deny that.
We contacted 47 villages, cities, and counties in the metro area and looked through thousands of absentee ballot return envelopes. In 2 months of work, we found 7 types of inconsistencies where absentee ballots were accepted and counted even though their envelopes did not appear to strictly follow state law or the rulings issued by judges during the recount. For example, envelopes without a voter's signature, without an eligible witness or the witness's address, or even no witness at all. In some cases, whether the ballot was counted apparently depended on where the voter lived. We showed some of these examples to the top elections official in Minneapolis.
This ballot is from Maple Grove. There's no voter signature. It was marked rejected. Okay. This ballot here is from Brooklyn Park. No voter signature. This one, it's not a check mark, but they wrote down that they rejected this ballot. You look at a couple from Minneapolis, though. For example, this one here, no voter signature accepted. There was this one here, no voter signature accepted.
Clearly, it should have been rejected in Minneapolis as well. We're all operating under the same rules.
It seems like you're being candid in saying that mistakes were made.
Mm-hmm. We're human beings, and it's bound to happen. But our task as election officials is to reduce to the extent we can the occasion for making those mistakes.
We also examined absentee ballot envelopes in Brooklyn Park.
In the 2008 election, were you following the letter of the law?
Yes. Yes, we were. We varied from the law as far as signatures, addresses. Yeah. But we want to give everybody an opportunity to vote. So,
were mistakes made, do you think, in the 2008 election?
Mistakes? I would say yes. Mistakes were made. Yeah.
But the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled any mistakes did not violate a voter's constitutional protections because they were not widespread.
There was no evidence of intentional discrimination. No absentee ballots were challenged on Election Day, and because there just simply is no way to take back a ballot once it's been counted. And despite the justices prodding state leaders to fix the inconsistencies in absentee voting for next time, Secretary of State Mark Ritchie, Minnesota's chief elections official, does not think there were any problems.
You, as a person in the media, can make an assumption and make an assumption and make an assumption.
We tried to show him the examples we found. Some were even entered as an offer of proof during the recount trial.
Here's an absentee ballot.
You would have had to tell me to bring my glasses if you wanted to spring something on me like this.
Ritchie first told us he could not read our examples. Then he said he wouldn't look at photocopies of absentee ballot envelopes.
We don't have anything other than people saying it might have happened and millions of dollars worth of investigators and lawyers looking into the whole process, not coming up with a single example. So we don't know.
We then told Ritchie what city officials told us about mistakes their cities had made.
I agree some of it was missed.
We had some accepted in error, some rejected in error.
So there's no proof in your mind that any absentee ballots were accepted that should not have been?
There's no proof presented to any court in any instance in this past election and the recount.
But at no time during our 75-minute interview would Secretary Ritchie explain how absentee ballots like those we found could be accepted without a voter signature, without a witness, or without other required information.
A little Xerox of an envelope is nothing to tell us about what actually happened in the process.
Some cities are taking action on their own. In the village of St. Anthony, the absentee ballot board will now meet 4 times, not just once. In Brooklyn Park, training will be revamped.
We're going to cover a little bit about absentee ballot.
In Minneapolis, election judges are undergoing training on lessons learned from 2008. Among the changes in 2009, they'll now separate overseas and domestic absentee ballot envelopes to reduce errors. They'll send all rejected absentees to a different set of judges to double-check. And they'll tell Election Day workers at the polls to closely examine absentee envelopes using one standard, state law.
So this is a wake-up call, if you will, to the Minnesota system as a whole to avoid this kind of variation. No doubt that problems have to be fixed before the next election.
A package of election reforms would remove absentee ballot counting from the precincts to one central location, would move up the primary date, and would allow early voting. They all passed the DFL-controlled legislature earlier this year and are supported by the DFL Secretary of State. The Republican governor vetoed it, though, because he said it was not bipartisan.
Very interesting evidence, and Mark, I have a feeling like we haven't heard the end of this.
I think we'll be hearing a lot more on this. And, you know, it's important to stress there were 2.9 million votes cast here. The vast majority were counted accurately. But this does raise questions, and some cities are saying we are going to take steps before the next election.
All right, Mark, thanks.